Hi students and family members, this is Mr. Panza. Today we'll be answering this question. How do we understand divisibility and how do we check for divisibility? There are two strategies that we've been talking about and teaching the students here at school. Let me show you to them now. The first strategy is knowing what are called divisibility rules. A number is divisible by 2 if it follows this rule. It's divisible by 3 if it follows this rule, 4 if it follows this rule, and so on. If a number follows any one of these rules, then it is divisible by all of these numbers, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10. However, you have to check every single one because a number may be divisible by 2, but is not divisible by 3. If you know these divisibility rules, you can check for divisibility quickly without using a calculator. However, if you struggle to memorize these divisibility rules, you can use a calculator and check for divisibility following these 3 steps. Let me show you them. In order to check for divisibility of any number, you need to follow these 3 steps. Take the largest number that you have and plug it into a calculator. So let's say we were trying to see if the number 56 was divisible by 2. Then the first number I would plug into the calculator would be 56 because it's the largest number I have. And then I need to divide that number by the divisor, or the smallest number, which is 2. And when I do that, I'm either going to see a number that is an exact whole number or a decimal. When you divide 56 by 2, your answer is an exact whole number of 28. In other words, this is not a decimal. It's a whole number. It wouldn't have a remainder, or it would have a remainder of 0. And we've talked to the students that if it is not a decimal, or if it does not have a remainder, then that tells you right there that 2 is a factor of 56, because 2 times 28 would get me 56, which is an exact whole number. Or in other words, 56 is evenly divisible by 2, because when I divide 2 into 56, I get an exact whole number of 28. And that's the knowledge you need to know to play today's divisibility game. Let me show you how to play. To play today's divisibility game, you'll need a spinner, a calculator, or the divisibility rules memorized, and a couple of dice. The reason you'll need each of these is because the spinner, the dice, they're going to create the numbers that you're going to be checking for divisibility, and the calculator could be used if you don't know your divisibility rules. You'll also want this following paper. This paper will give you an opportunity to show your work or what you're plugging into the calculator, and it will also help you keep score. Let me show you how. The first thing I need to do is roll the dice. I rolled a 6 and a 4, which means the largest number I'm going to divide is 64. Before I do anything else, I'm going to write that down on my sheet and I'm going to plug it into the calculator, because again, 64 will be the number I am checking. Is it divisible by another number? Plug 64 into my calculator and write it down on my workspace. It's going to be 64 divided by some number. You may be thinking, what number? That's where the spinner comes into play. I'm going to see if it's divisible by one of these numbers on the spinner, and I check to see what number by spinning the spinner. I spun, and the arrow is pointing at the 4, which means I want to see if 64 is divisible by 4. So I'm going to, here in school we have calculators where you can press this integer divide button, which will show you the remainders, but if you don't, you just press the regular division. You're looking to see if it gives you a decimal or not. I'm going to press the INT divide, and I take a look. I'm dividing by 4. I'm checking to see if 4 is a factor of 64. Will 4 times something get me exactly 64? Or in other words, I'm checking to see if 64 is divisible by 4. If it is, I'm not going to get a remainder. In this case, my answer is 16 with a remainder of 0. I need to plug that into my answer sheet. So I was doing 64 divided by 4. My answer was 16 with a remainder of 0. So in this case, I take the 64 and I separate the digits. There is a 6 in 64 and a 4 in 64. When I add those together, I get my total points scored. I'm trying to score more points than my opponent. So then it's my opponent's turn. What are they going to do? Exactly what I just did. They're going to pull up the spinner, the dice, and the calculator and start all over. First, figure out what you're going to divide into. They're going to divide the number 16, and they're going to see if 9 is a factor of 16, or if 16 is divisible by 9. So take 16, divide it by 9, and see that you get 1 remainder 7. Plug that information onto your answer sheet. So you may want to draw a line to separate between you and your partner. Again, the fact that you are doing 16 divided by 9, and your answer is 1 with a remainder of 7. Which in this case means because it is not divisible, I don't earn any points. You're hoping first that it's divisible, and if it is, like it was in our first example, you score the points by coming up with the sum of the 2 digits in your dividend. So now, if you understand the rules of today's game, you can grab what you need, which again is a spinner, 2 dice, and a calculator, as well as this worksheet, find a partner, and try and score more points than them, practicing your divisibility rules. I hope you have fun, and I hope you have a good time checking for divisibility.